So why do people, why is policy so worried about the number of children? It really comes from this very basic idea that if you have a pie and you have more people who want to share the pie, there's going to be less pie for every person. And if you really have too many people on the pie, you're going to have very small slices for each person. This is a pretty basic idea. This was first, maybe not first, but at least most famously expressed by Malthus, who basically explained that there are fixed factors in the world. For example, there is only so much land. So because there is only so much land, we can only grow so much food. So if we have large population, we are fighting for this restricted food. Eventually, we will starve. Now, the advantage is that this is stabilizing force, because when everybody starves, everybody dies. And when everybody dies, there is again fewer people, so the remaining people can again eat whatever food is left. And he cited as an example the Black Death, which was a plague epidemic. So he's a poor person who is affected by the plague. It was a huge epidemic in Europe. If you have not seen The Seventh Seal by Bergman, you should see it. And it's about the plague in the north, in Sweden. It was believed to have killed half of British population between 1348 and 1377. And Malthus explained that this happened, half the people died, and in the following century, wages kept rising. So that was for him an example of what was going on. In the book, we discussed a more recent incarnation of this Malthus view, and in particular, some analogus of the Black Death. What is it? The HIV and AIDS. So there is this professor at the LSE. Interestingly, Alvin Young was also in England, who makes the same argument, saying HIV and AIDS, of course, it's a bit bad because people die, but people dying in the end will free up productive resources, both because people are dying, so that fewer people. That's not great, because the people who are dying of HIV/AIDS are mostly the active generation. So it's not great to lose those guys. But the remaining people also have fewer children. That should be good for GDP per capita. That's a bit grueling as an idea. And the question is whether it's true or not. So what is potentially wrong in Malthus's argument, like about this idea that we have a fixed pie, there is only so much land, we can only produce so much food, and if we have more people, there'll be less food for everyone. What's problematic with this idea?
He doesn't leave room for innovation. So in the Green Revolution, population pressures actually spurred technological innovation that boosted food production.
Exactly, it doesn't leave room for innovation. So the first thing is, when we write down a production function, we tend to write down the production function with a big A that multiplies how much capital there is in the economy, which multiplies how much labor there is in the economy. So that's our production function. The big A is this unknown thing, that we discussed last time when we talked about education. It's like the productivity, the innovation, etc. of people. Usually we consider this A to be non-rival, which means that if you come up with a great idea, your great idea can be used not only by you, but by anybody else. So for example, if I come up with a new seed in the Green Revolution, then everyone can use it. So then mechanically, if there are more people around, and if ideas tend to come in this kind of random way, every morning during your shower, you have some probability to come up with the new seed for the Green Revolution, or to come up with the concept of iPad, or to come up with a Facebook, and the more people we are, the more chances there is that one of us comes back with an idea. So this is a feature of all of those models of technological progress that the more people we are, the more likely we are to have a good idea that's going to benefit everyone. That's a feature of models that people generally don't like. They think it's a bit strange about it. But why not? At the end of the day, that's true. And then there is the argument that reinforces this effect furthermore, which is the argument you had, which is, in addition, if we're about to starve because there is so much population pressure, then that puts pressure on us to have more ideas. So that gives us all the right incentive to try and figure it out. For these two reasons, what we should expect is when there are more people around, people have more ideas, and therefore growth is also faster. So there is a very interesting paper by Michael Kremer, which looks at that in the world. So this is population growth, 5 million BC to 1990. As you can imagine, the quality of the data improved a little bit between 5 million BC and 1990. And the data points in 5 million BC are a little bit scanty. However, what he does here is that he has periods of data. So his first point is from 5 million BC. It's estimated, obviously. Then the second might be 1 million BC. So that's a very long period of time. And then he may have annual data between 1960 and 1990. But what he does is for each period he calculates the annual growth rate of population in between 1 year and the next year, and regresses it here, or plots it against how much population there was at the time. This is done worldwide. So this is population growth rate on population in billion. And what we see is the exact opposite as the Malthusian graph, which is basically the more people there are, the faster the population grows. And that's about linear. So the more people we are, the more population grows, which suggests that this idea of a fixed land is wrong, because I would go the other way, that there's no stabilizing force that brings back the population back to zero. And instead, it's the opposite that happens. So far, there has not been really any evidence that the Malthusian theory was right. In fact, we are many, many more people than we were in Malthus's time. And people are, by and large, much richer than they were in Malthusian's time, and eating much more, and healthier, and having longer lives. So it doesn't seem that if you look at the very short history of the world, you get so scared by what's going on here. And yet, this Malthusian argument, in a form or another, somehow never dies. It always keeps coming back. And interestingly, where it most recently came back, or more prominently came back, is in Jeff Sachs's book, new book, not the End of Poverty book that we discussed before, but he has a book called Commonwealth, and the subtitle is Economics for a Crowded Planet. So that's pretty much said it all. Planet is crowded, too crowded. One of the main challenges is population. This I took from his website, where he kind of advertises the book. Stabilizing the world's population is crucial to ensuring peace and prosperity on this already crowded planet. If we ignore this issue, we risk a massive and unsettling new purge, unbearable environmental pressures, and unchecked global migration. So the unbearable environmental pressure, that refers to exactly the type of limited resource argument that we can have in the Malthusian world. And so, is there any reason to worry about that? Indeed, what we do find that is something pretty striking is that the countries that have higher fertility rate are much poorer. So here it's plotted in the other direction. We have the wealth of the country and the fertility rate. It's a nice log relationship. If we were plotting it in log, that would be log linear. Yep.
Has there been any investigations about why Saudi Arabia and Israel are so noticeably removed from kind of the trend?
So what do you think? So first, in what way are they both removed from the trend?
They have higher fertility rates than you'd expect for their GDP.
Exactly, they are. So in other words, they are richer than you'd expect, given how populous they are. So how about Saudi Arabia? They have oil, so they're pretty rich. Israel?
They have an existential threat to their existence. They want to populate more.
Yeah, Israel has a pretty Israel, that's a very good way to set it. They have an existential threat to their existence. On the other hand, it's a very rich, very intellectually very rich country. They also get a lot of support. And it's also very small, so that might eventually create issues. In fact, that does create issues. But that's probably the reason why Israel is so much richer compared to their income. And the Israel case kind of illustrates well the problem with this graph, which is you could read from this graph that, having a large population makes you want to be, makes you poorer. Or you could read from this graph that poor countries have more kids, or richer countries have fewer kids, in the opposite direction. That is the lack of wealth that makes people have a lot of children, maybe because of people's choices. And that's where because when we explain Israel, we don't want to explain why Israel is rich despite having many children. We want to explain why Israel has a high fertility rate despite being rich. So we explain here what are the reasons why people in Israel would like kids. That's not the case in other countries. So that's kind of what I'm saying here. As usual, the correlation could go either way. We could find that poor countries could be poor because they are too crowded. A rich country could have lower fertility because they're rich. Maybe as people become richer, the opportunity cost of their time is higher. As countries become richer, women are more likely to have things that they can do in the labor market. And therefore, women are more likely to participate in the labor market. And therefore, having a kid, you don't want to be taking a year of your life every other year because you're bearing or nursing a very small child. So it's kind of difficult to answer this question. It's not going to be solvable by looking at the countries. And it's even harder to ask what population increase would do to the planet. It might be right, even if Malthus was wrong, Jeff Sachs might still be right. It might be right that we will never find a solution to get clean water access to everyone, especially if it's a much larger group of people. It might also be wrong, but it's difficult to know.